I feel like I say it like that every week. Hello. Like I'm surprised that we're streaming now. Even when I hit the
Yeah.
now streaming button. Welcome back to episode 2 of Tips and Tricks and Stuff and Things. That's the official title now. With Boom and Dreav and Boom. Us. Last week we covered how to make a character. And this week, all that information is irrelevant because Rule 20 has put out a new tool that we weren't really going to go over today, but we can kind of show it to you very quickly. It's really cool. It's really helpful. So if your DM gives you a new character...
You want to zoom in just a little bit, Boom.
Oh, yeah. Here. If you're getting a new character, you've got this nifty tool called Charactermancer. And I'm not going to click through all these things because it's really, really easy. We might do an in-depth video later, but it's really simple and super easy. You start and you choose your race. And then you choose a class. So you don't have to do all the crazy stuff that we were talking about. And obviously you can get the book if you want it, but go through here and it runs you through literally everything you need for a level 1 character. Backgrounds, now here we did notice that they only have the Acolyte, so you will still need to find someone with a book or something, dndbeyond.com, to input your backgrounds. But equipment based off, so it just goes through everything. Once you make all your selections, it will tell you what you have missed. So I didn't select a race, a class, I didn't put my ability scores in. It tells me spells. The arcane is a mystery to you, which means I have no spells. And it will go through everything, and it's really cool. We're not going to cover that today because I'm taking 5 minutes to tell you how simple it is now. But we might later. No, today is we are talking about NPC creation and how to effectively or ineffectively use them on Rule 20. We'll talk about the lefts and rights of that. We're going to, depending on how long that takes, we're going to talk about maps and dynamic lighting and some DM tools. And then we're going to go over tips and tricks and any questions, if you have any. Which you might, or not. Who knows?
We'll see.
We'll see. But we'll go through the information, and I don't know if the other one got downloaded. I might need to see if the other one gets downloaded before it disappears. But we can put them on YouTube for funds and go from there. So yeah, let's go into NPC creation. So really, when it comes to making NPCs, there's really a couple different ways you can do it. You can, obviously, if you want your NPC to have the stats of something that's already in one of the books, for instance, I didn't grab my books, so stall them while I grab my books.
I'm supposed to. Hi guys, this is me attempting to stall. One thing you do have to realize too with your NPC is you have to keep in mind how fleshed out do they need to be? How often are your characters going to be seeing these? And there could be some NPCs that you think that aren't going to be around for very long, which your characters become attached to, and then you can always transition from a very small to where you have like just basic stats for an NPC like this or something, to having to flesh out a full character sheet for him because they decide to take him into battle or something. You never know. But if you at the very least, have your basic stats for your NPCs, something similar to this, or just your basic stats, it'll go a little easier for you.
So what I was grabbing my book because I was grabbing a monster manual.
Hi, Ash.
Hello, Simply. So like
Hi, Simply.
in the back of your monster manual, you can look and see there's already some NPCs back there, and they added more when it came to one of these other books. They added it's Volos has some other NPC characters in the back, but they have you can find like an acolyte. So if you've got a temple full of acolytes and you're like, going to be role-playing these characters and you want to have a stat block for them, the book has already created one. Something that I think needs to be said, because it wasn't said to me as an early prospering DM, and it will save a lot of time, is you don't have to roll a playable character for every single person that's in the game. 1, that will take a lot of time. 2, it's not necessary. And 3, it's just, unless you really like making characters. But the problem that you have with that is if you have NPCs that would have the same rules or rights as a player character, you can really take too many liberties, I think, when it comes to things like death and rolling death saves for your big bag evil guy or anything like that. Now, that's always up to DM discretion, but if you just kind of make a simple NPC, like Dreav said, you can always expand on them if you don't think you can say they have a weapon, but you may need to put what a sword rolls when it's time to use the sword, if they do. I would actually have that kind of stuff on your DM screen, but we'll get to that another time. Things you should have, we can do that later. Essentially, though, if you look at that, it will give you everything you need. It'll give you basic stats so that when you're rolling, you can always another good thing to have. I'm going into this, and I wasn't gonna on your screen. If you have what ability score equals which modifier, you can very easily just make up NPCs on the spot. You just wrote some stats down. Oh, I think they would have a +4 in strength because they're really strong, or a +2. Then when you have to roll a check for them, because NPCs sometimes have to roll checks too, you can automatically kind of know what their role is going to be, and then you could write those down and make an NPC later. That's actually all I was going to say. I was just going to say you can do it as you go. Since we're talking about being online, though, there's tons of websites for creating NPCs. Like, you could have tabs upon tabs upon tabs of just generate an NPC. The only thing you want to do is either save it, take a screenshot, or you don't want to make an NPC and then, because that person's in the world now. So even if the players never come back to that town where that farmer helped them by giving them some strawberries to eat, you could potentially still need that person, because you have no idea if that's going to be the person that they want to come along with them when they fight the dragon at the end of the campaign. So you're going to want to have Jerry the farmer tucked away somewhere in your notes so that you know where he is.
The cool thing is, if on Roll20, if you have characters that start getting a little out of control, you can archive characters and archive sheets that you can always come back to later, so they don't clutter up your main screen that you put away.
How do I do that? Is that a pro thing? Or?
No. On the character selection screen, if you right-click their name before you open the character sheet,
look at that.
Compendium card, they can archive, and it will archive them to another tab that's hidden at the bottom, so that it's not in your way, but it doesn't delete them.
I didn't know how to do that. That's pretty cool. Look at that. I'm learning today.
So it's useful if you're running one-shots or multiple characters or campaigns in the setting. You can just archive them and keep them hidden so that they're not in your way. But you can always go back to them later if you do need them.
Super cool. I didn't.
And then, you can restore their character sheets too, and it'll pull them back up to whatever they were.
Need to do that more. Huh. That's cool. So yeah, we kind of talked about that. We're going to go into creating an NPC. So because you have your computer at your fingertips, creating an NPC can be super simple. And we'll talk about kind of monsters too. There's tons of things online you can find, you know, like we said, if you want it to be super simple, just do like a basic stat block. Just roll them some numbers. You do want to kind of figure out what race they are, if they would or wouldn't have dark vision, any languages they would know, just some basic things. You know, because like all Dragonborns are the same and would still have their dragon breath if they're NPC or not, those kinds of things. And I would just kind of write those down somewhere. Now, so on your character sheet, they're going to show you how to at least set one up, because there's a special way to set it up on Roll20. So we're going to call this NPC Guy. NPC Guy. And NPC Guy, we obviously don't need to put it in anybody's journal, unless it's an NPC that you're letting a character control, but it's called an NPC because it's a non-player character. So you shouldn't give anybody control of that character sheet, and then you want it to be controlled by you, so you can select your name or just not, and it will default to just the GM. No tags needed. You could put an avatar in here if you wanted these to be pictures. Then obviously you want this to, if you just want to, oh, I know that that's Ackland, you just pull Ackland. And then obviously if you have a token for them, you can create the token as well, and then it'll just be linked to the token, and we'll talk about what that link does later. I am going to get into that. And then as the other character sheets had, there's bio and GM notes. But if you save that, it's going to pull up the Character Mancer, but we don't want the Character Mancer, so we're going to say cancel, or we could say opt out, I guess. Discard and exit, and it will give us a normal character sheet. Now last week we went through like 2 hours how to fill this whole thing out, which you can still do. You still can, and you can use that kind of stuff, like I said, for an NPC, but it's going to take a long time. And it's not always the best. What I like to do, I didn't really shout this out last week, on my phone, this is an iPhone, I'm not sure what Android has available, there's 5th edition character sheet. It's an app. And it's like
on Android too.
Okay. And I don't know, I think I paid for it. I don't remember.
I just did the free version with ads.
Okay. There's a free version with ads. But it's super simple, super easy, and it makes the process, like for an NPC, it makes it super easy. The only thing that it doesn't make easy is picking spells, which the Character Mancer does make easy. But you can always figure that, you know, once you figure out a class. As a GM, it's good to kind of know a bit about every class, even if you haven't played some, just so you know, obviously, how they work. So this is your normal character sheet. You can obviously have this for every NPC if you want it, but it's just got a lot of information. It's going to use up, if you're only working with 1 or 2 screens, it's going to take up your screens if you have to have 2 monsters and an NPC open. Trust me. I know. I've had to have like 5 open at one time, and like half of them were NPCs. So the best thing to do is to come to your cogwheel, and you want to click this little box that says NPC. We went through most of this other stuff last week. I always, especially if it's NPC, I always whisper rolls to the GM. Always whisper rolls. Because unless you're doing, now, Dreav can kind of talk about this as she wants, but there can be campaigns where the DM rolls in front of the players. Every roll, or some rolls, Have you done any of those? Have you ever been a part of a game like that?
No.
Okay. I haven't either, but I know
we always just gave you flack for it for sometimes because you just roll so ridiculously well or so ridiculously bad.
I do, and that's true. But you can do that. Like you can have like if it's an NPC that you just want everyone to see their rolls. But normally, like at least for monsters, I turn whisper rolls on, and then the players can't see them. But you could at least take a screenshot or something, unless you're rolling in person. But if you're using Roll20 to do, and I know that, go ahead. That's not you.
Not me.
I know that when you can buy like all the core books on Roll20, and they will give you already made character sheets for like monsters and stuff. So if you use those, they'll already have it all set up. You just click attacks and stuff like that. And then we talked about this, but I always take advantage off as a default. I don't like it. I just don't like it. But you click that NPC, and those will come. The query will come with it, or the toggle, I should say, will come with if you turn it on.
You're gonna want to zoom in, Boom.
I can definitely zoom in. But if you look at this, it's now going to be less. It's going to be less to look at.
There we go.
Everything's so big. Okay. So, yeah. So you can now fill this in, and you can do it pretty simply. So it says NPC type. So this would be like if they're, medium, their alignment. You could really put anything in here to remind you, wizard with one eye or whatever. Armor class. We talked about armor class. If it's a normal person, like a normal guy walking across the street, and you wanted to make a character sheet because he's important for some reason, you would probably just put 10, unless he's wearing armor. Then you need to reference the player's handbook for which armor grants how much, and that's may or may not be it will be based off his dex. So you kind of want to figure out his dex first, but it's good to have that. It's really simple. Hello.
Hi, Simply.
It's really simple when it comes to like wizards and mages, because most of them will have the what do you call it? Mage armor. Mage armor. The way mage armor works, if they have cast that for the day, it's going to make their AC 12 plus whatever their dex modifier is, and so that you can know mage's armor class pretty easy, because it's going to be 12 plus whatever this modifier is. Hit points, you're going to need it. It all just kind of depends on like if there's a class associated with your NPC, then the hit points will kind of be based off of that. If it's a monster, it will obviously tell you a formula in the book. How do you like to do that, Dreav? Do you like to take the average of hit points, or do you like to roll for your monsters and people? I
tend to just take the average because DM prep already has enough work in it for me. I just take the average.
Unless you think your roll is going to come out higher than the average, it's usually best just to take the average.
Which Roll20 hates me, so.
Right. Well, yeah, whenever I roll for a monster, it always turns out to be low. So it just kind of depends on what you want to do. And you have a lot of leeway with this too. Let's say that I've done this before. If the party's going to run into like a pack of wolves, you could have it where all the wolves have however many hit points a wolf is supposed to have. If you wanted to add some difficulty to the encounter, you could make it a mama wolf, or a mama bullet with some baby bullets. And so you would increase and maybe do a little bit of buffing to the and you could make it bigger just to kind of show the players that that one, you know, has a little more health without directly telling them this one has 22 hit points while the rest have 10. You don't, you know, I'm all for storytelling and the narrative, so you want to kind of make things make sense without just outright telling them. So you could give one wolf, you know, 3 of the wolves have twice as much HP while the rest have 1. That's just one way you can kind of buff up an encounter while still throwing the same monsters and keeping the CR level kind of the same. But that's hit points. Speed is going to be based off either the monster or the creature. So if it's a person, it just depends on what they are. Commander Root, thank you for that follow. We highly appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the follow.
Your attributes are going to be your... it just depends on what you're looking at. So if you're looking at a monster, it will already be made for you. So let me kind of back up a second. This can be used for basically anything that isn't a player. So if that's a monster or another person, it can be used. What I like to do, what's easiest for me, and well, what's easiest for me is not what's probably easiest for the next person. If you want to keep everything online, you most certainly can, and it's really easy. That's kind of what we're going to be showing you. It's super easy to keep everything here online, so you're just clicking to roll, click, 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 click. I personally like to roll the dice, as you guys have seen, for over a year, so I do so. And I do so hidden, as everyone knows. But you can do it however you want. For me, it's easier if I have the book in front of me and I read what the monster's attacks are, and if I just write on a piece of... Well, no, I don't write on a piece of paper anymore. I'll show you what I do for HP. I used to, and it's not easier that way because I'm bad at math. So I'll show you what I do for HP. But you could potentially just have all this digital. So what I like to do, if it's a monster, not all the monsters are going to be in this compendium. Like, most are, and you would think they're all there, but there's no beholder. I don't understand why. Beholders are so hard to find, probably because they have 10,000 abilities. But if you find whatever you're fighting, so let's just say that you're fighting an ape, a big old ape.
Ta-da! Roll20's done the work for you.
Is automatically imported into your character sheet, and it puts the name, and it puts the armor class, tells you the hit points, or if you wanted to roll, you can do that. It tells you everything you need to know about the ape. It puts its actions in, so when it's time, they make a fist attack. There's the fist attack, and it did roll this one with advantage because I think it made a new sheet. But it did that, and then it will roll the damage. Super simple,
Yes,
super easy. Yeah, I thought it was going to drag into my sheet. Usually I drag it into the sheet, but it just made a new sheet. But if for some reason, you know, this ape had a name, it gave it a new sheet.
There we go.
So now this is Caesar from Planet of the Apes. And if you think that Caesar maybe doesn't have 19 hit points because he's amazing, I'll just tell you, that's one beefy ape to have 100 hit points. But you kind of can do that. You need to be a little careful when doing that right off the bat as a new DM. but you definitely can increase some things. Just make sure that you have a reason if you're going to vastly, you know, right now, you know, the ape doesn't have a swim speed, so if you're like, oh, the ape can swim too, maybe you have a reason for why it can swim, just because in D&D, apparently apes can't have a swim speed. So just figure it out. It's not too difficult. And it put your stats all in here already. And so I already showed you, but if you need to roll something for your NPC, you just click in the sheet and it will roll it. Now, here's a question I get a lot, especially when I give these. So I'll give these kind of sheets to my players sometimes, because you'll see our ranger, Inna, she can sometimes summon creatures, and she wants to have a sheet for them. So like the other Sunday, they were fighting the Beholder. I had to make on the fly a vulture sheet, and then I gave her permission to use it. Because it's super simple for her to just come down and click on things rather than trying to figure it out. Whereas sometimes if I don't have the character sheet ready, and Dreav with her beast shape can turn into like 10,000 different things, it's sometimes easier if she just looks it up, and then that's why she just inputs the rolls, because we don't have it figured out. But a question I get a lot is, roll a stealth check for Caesar. Well, I don't see the skill stealth, so I can't roll a stealth check. Well, yes, you can. It just means he doesn't have any skill bonus to stealth, which means it's going to default to the modifier with which stealth falls under, which is dex. If you don't have all that memorized, it's okay. You can look it in your book, or you can ask another DM. But a stealth check for Caesar would just be a +2. So he rolled a dex check, and it ended up being 13 and 6. And that would be his stealth, and then you would obviously go from there. So you can see that because it rolled a new sheet also, it had advantage on. So you could always turn that off and go from there. But that's what I like to do, is just pull them over and make new sheets. It's super simple. But like I said, like for a Beholder, if you wanted a sheet for that, I'll start to kind of show you how to do that. So if for instance, you wanted a Beholder in here, or anything that's not over in the compendium, or if you're making your own guy, like we said, I'll continue with that, you'd put your attributes in, and then depending on either their class or what the book says, you would put their saves in too. And the saves is just a modifier. So if you want them to have +4 on their con saves, you'd put a 4 there. And most things, unless they're super beefy, only get 2 of these. But you just have to look. For instance, there's probably some monsters in here that have save modifiers to multiple things. Like for instance, I'm looking at a red dragon. An ancient red dragon has saving throw bonuses in dexterity, constitution, wisdom, and charisma. So you would put all of those in there. So then you would look at skills. Let's see if I can show you both here.
Some ancient red dragons in there.
So obviously because this is in the compendium, we could just pull it over and it would automatically do it. But if you're finding something in the book that isn't in the compendium, this is kind of how you would do it. And now red dragons are big and have a lot of things, so we'll just kind of go over the basics. So for armor class, I would obviously write 22. I do the same thing for hit points. Speed, even though one's going to go away because it's silly. you just copy and paste that. But you would input all these if you're doing it from the book. Your attributes, you would then just put these numbers in, and it will obviously apply these bonuses. So you don't do the bonuses, you want the actual scores. And then saving throws, we just talked through that. So I'd put a 7 in Dex, a 16 in Con, 9, 13 appropriately. For skills, so the dragon only has a plus 16 in Perception and plus 7 in Stealth. So I would come over here to, I'd find Perception. And Stealth, and I would just put those there. Everything else is a 0. Unless you're trying to make your dragon unbeatable, then you could add other things, and those wouldn't really give it much of an advantage unless there's a lot of, for instance, if there was going to be a lot of talking to the dragon, and you thought, this actually brings up a good point, if you thought it's going to be really hard to talk for an PC to talk their way out of a dragon's lair, you can obviously give them bonus to insight. You could give them an insight. Now you have to keep in mind that the dragon's already going to get a plus 6 in charisma checks. So if you wanted to do that, you would roll for the dragon insight, add a plus 6. But if you thought it needed to be more difficult, you could do that. So that's an interesting example, because you could do that, or you would just set a DC for that check, and then the DC would be whatever, accordingly, 5, 10, 15, 10,000, whatever you want it to be.
Let's go with 10,000.
Yeah, 10,000's really difficult. 1 second. You can stall them.
Always gotta be with the stalling, man. There's a couple different things you could do. There's different resources out there, like Boom was saying. There's D&D Beyond. You have your monster manual. I have something else that I use to simplify stats and put them all on a thing for me. You gotta find what works best for you. You can keep it all online. I find keeping some of the stuff in person is easier than having 50 million screens open. But it's based on your playstyle there for you.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
So obviously the senses, the damage immunities, you would just port all that stuff over. The challenge rating and XP if you need it. Token size. So if you linked a token, you could make the token automatically bigger. There are dragons that do have spellcasting abilities, or if your person that your bad guy has spellcasting, we would check that. And then you can, so if you're making a bard, it'd be charisma, but your spellcasting ability, this is where you do that. There's a global magic attack modifier, so you would put that in there. Whatever level they are as a caster, so if they're a level 10 caster. And then their spell save DC modifier. Oh, that's weird. It has the modifier instead of just the actual number.
Because once you put the modifier in there, once you click out of the cogwheel, it should go to the basic, or it should show up on the regular character sheet, I think.
Ah, gotcha. And then if they have reactions, which... Oh, has reactions. Yes. And then legendary actions. Yes. Dragon has 3. So you'd put all those in. And then this is here as well. So now you can see it started to fill in things as we put them in. So it filled in all the things that we put in for it. And now this is the most tedious part for me, as far as if I'm making a manual character sheet. It just because, you know, if you're going from the book or not taking it somewhere offline, if you see all these actions and you want to remember these, you're not going to look in the book and you're going to just use this character sheet, you need to port all these over to here. You would do that by name. If it's an attack, you have to put all this information in over here just so that you have something that's good and clickable. So I will do a bite attack for you because I'm a friend. So now, oh, I put it in the wrong place. Oh, no, I didn't. I just didn't name it. So this is a bite attack. So when we click that, it's going to roll it. And then you would want to put in all of these things. So if it doesn't have reactions, which it says there's no specific reactions, obviously the dragon would get opportunity attacks, but if there's anything that specifically says reactions on the character sheet, that's what that would be. I understand now. And then the legendary actions, you would want to port those over too, because it tells you what you can do, and you'll want to keep track of those because it doesn't look like there's a way to keep track of them in the character sheet. So that's what I usually have to do, is have a sticky note and just write how many I've used, because it resets on that NPC's turn. And then you can see, we went through spellcasting last week, but spellcasting is all down here. So you would add the spell, and you could drag and drop them over again from the compendium, or you could put them in manually. And it tells you how many slots you have because we put them in as a level 10 caster. If we put them in as a level 1 caster, then they just get the, the stuff and things. So that's pretty much how to do a sheet. So I think I went through. So what I like to do, if it's an NPC that's probably going to be around, I will usually use my phone, and I will create a quick sheet. If it's someone that needs to have spells, I will usually port them over to Roll20, because it is easier to roll and just be able to look up their modifier, or just if you're into just clicking on things, you can just click their checks. But typically I will not use this for my NPCs. I do end up using the big bad character sheet. And that's just because it's all on one page, and usually if they're a spellcaster, I don't know, I can just have the spells minimized and look at those, and if I need to see the scores, I can just come over here and they're big, the modifiers are big. I don't know. That's what I do. It probably would be easier if I just put them in as NPCs, but that just depends. It just depends on how much time you have too, though. So there is that. Yeah, but when it comes to like fights and stuff, typically I like to, I don't know. For me, I guess it depends on the fight. Like the Beholder fight, I had the book in front of me, I was reading the book, and then I was rolling whatever was necessary to roll. Well, it was pretty easy for the Beholder because things just happen and people make saves. But for instance, like in the dinosaur fight a lot of episodes ago, I had an NPC character sheet for each dinosaur, and I had them on over here. So all I was doing was, you know, looking up attacks, looking at their abilities, and rolling for them. It really depends on how many screens you have, what you have the availability to do. If you're just working on one screen, it's probably going to be easier to make character sheets up and pull them up as you need them.
You can also,
depends.
with Roll20, if you, say the Ancient Red Dragon that you have pulled up there.
That I just closed? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you pull that character sheet out, you can, if you double click his name up at the top, it'll like minimize it into your background while leaving it up on your map. So you can always, so that's a way to know what character sheets you have open without them being on your screen and like the full sheet on your screen blocking you.
So yeah, so I just did that with my Boom character sheet, but I also did that with the Compendium sheet for the Red Dragon. So if you just need information on the dragon and you didn't want to make him a character sheet, you could just have this up and look up your attacks and then put him down when you don't need him. Him or her. Him or her.
Them. They. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers NPC sheets.
Yeah, NPC sheets. So we can kind of start moving to. We'll just kind of jump around with maps, tips and tricks. We won't go beyond our. We went 45 minutes on that, which is pretty cool. So the next hour and 15 minutes, we're just gonna kind of detail maps, dynamic lighting, and we'll go over some tips and tricks. So a tip and trick that I use for battle. This is how I do health. It is easiest for me. It's taken me a while to get here, but this is how I find easiest to do health. So we take our little halfling that we had earlier, and once you click on a token, this will come up. Player, NPC, any token, this will come up. Even if it's not a person, this will always come up. And so these three here, we're going to get into what these are. If you double click on the token, it will bring up the edit token. And so the edit token really lets you edit that token. If you already, that sounds super dumb. If you already linked it with a character sheet, that would show up here. Or you can do this and it will show up in the character sheet. But you can show who controls that, and characters cannot control tokens unless you give them specific permission. So if you're giving someone a vulture, you have to give them permission to move that vulture, or they're going to be reliant on you to do so. The name, so this is kind of tricky because people just think you can type a name in here, hit show nameplate, and it will show up. This is not true. You have to hit show nameplate to get the nameplate to show, but to give it permission to show, you have to actually give it permission in advanced settings. So you go to advanced settings, and your advanced settings give you player permissions. So if the players want to see the name of this person, we give the C. So edit's already innate in default. But if you want to give the ability to see things, you have to click on those. So when it says bar 1, 2, 3, that's going to go back to our red, blue, and green. So we'll say C for 1. And then we're going to back out. And so right now there's no bar above this guy, even though we gave it permission. That's because the bar is going to be determined by this number here. I thought. Oh, I hit cancel and not save changes. That makes sense. I think. Oh, red is bar 3. My bad. I know what I'm doing, I promise. Maybe. Why is it not doing it? Why aren't you work?
Probably because we both have the character sheet.
No, you have to. That's why. You have to do 50 out of 50. Hey, Cooj, I really like the Henry emote, man.
Hi, Cooj. Oh, that emote.
Very cool. Very cool. What's up, man? So this bar, it can be actually super helpful for DMs to make their characters use this, because then you can kind of see visually where people are at on health. If you're like my players, they forgot to do it, and so their bars above their heads mean nothing. But what you can do is, so if you don't want that bar to be seen, you can take it out. And so now players cannot see the bar, but you still can, because there is a 50 out of 50 right here. So if you want that bar to go away, we know we have to take the second one out. And now there's no bar above his head, but there's still a number here. So I like to use this for health. It's easiest for me. So if I have a dude and he's got 50 health, he can just do his thing. And then if Chad comes along and says, I hit him twice and do 57 damage, I click on this guy, I know he's dead. Or if he only hit him once, he says I do 27 damage, I have to do the math and just know that he has 23 remaining.
You can actually, when it's hooked up to the character sheet, when you assign it a character sheet, if they input the health, when they lower the health, it will lower the bar.
You can't, right, I was going to do that. So you can do that too. If we want to link this guy to a character sheet that we've made, we put in, we linked this to the Boom character sheet. So when we go to the Boom character sheet, this is now linked to our guy. But the 23 doesn't seem like his the amount of health that we said he had. So these three over here determine how you link them to the character sheet. And you can link anything to these three little circles. If we go down and we find HP, it's going to automatically go to what we have in our character sheet. So it went 10 out of 10. So now he has a little bar above his head that shows he has 10 hit points. And as Dreav is doing, she just put in 5 for his current 5 out of 10, and you can see that his bar went half. So he's at half health. If the bars are helpful for your players, you can put them on there, but you don't have to use them. It's just I don't like putting them above monsters because I think it breaks the immersion. If you can see the health bar dwindling, then it's more like a video game than it is a role-playing game. But character, if you've played any RPGs at all, players will have ways of asking you, how hurt is this looking? And they're trying to get a sense of how much health it does have, and there's ways to get around that rather than saying, oh, he has 57 out of 110 hit points, because I don't like doing that. But that's just me. Someone else may come along and be like, no, we need to know. That's your game. You do what you want to do. Yeah, you can say he looks bad, he looks bloody, he looks hurt.
Guys on death's door.
He's missing his legs. You can do that kind of stuff and figure it out from there. So I typically will, use red for health. I won't do the bar from a GM perspective. I just keep the number here. That way I'm not writing it down on a sticky note and having to keep it here. And typically I'm not in the character sheets enough to do the health like that. If it's an NPC I have a character sheet for, then yes. If it's like a monster on the map, I typically will just input their number here. So what I like to do is I like to use this for health. if I just need like a quick, I don't want to have all these character sheets up, I will use blue usually for AC. I don't know if that's what you were doing there. I don't always link it to the character sheet, like I said. However, I will put their AC here, and then typically green, I don't usually use, but you could put, if they have a different movement other than 30, you could put their movement in there.
Passive perceptions.
You could put passive perceptions. You could put their initiative modifier. Anything that you think is going to help you. Really, if you wanted to, anything that you think is going to help you is just a quick, so you don't have to keep these character sheets open. Although this is really, this is really easy to do. But if you just need something quick, you just need to go, oh yeah, you hit that guy, then you have that too. There's no right and wrong way to DM. I think we said this last time. I don't remember. But there's really not. There's no right and wrong way to do it. Everyone has their own personal preference. There's people that have been playing since the first edition came out, and there's people that picked it up last week. The way you DM is the way you DM, and I would be open, I think you should be open to criticisms and getting better, because there are a lot of DMs that this is my way or the highway. I don't think that's always the right aspect, but the way that the style you find for you is the style you find for you. And I say go for it. Because it depends on, it's going to change if you're playing online versus if you're playing in person. Because you may or may not have some of these tools at your fingertips. So typically, that's just one tip I like to do. But if we go back in here, we'll start talking about lighting a little bit. So that's how to do the bars. The auras, they just show you a radius. So for sometimes we've done this like when Fairy Fire or Zan Falcon had different things that 15 feet from you, you can put those on there. Now obviously players will not see this unless we go in and actually click the C button. But you can make it a square as well. So if, for instance, you wanted to do Fairy Fire, Fairy Fire is a 15-foot cube based on a point or location, and it didn't have to be a person. You could pull I don't know, something, a griffin or... Not finding anything good. Here. I Fairy Fire the table. We would go into the table's token. See, there's nothing in here because it's a table. It has no abilities. All you would have to do is click C on Aura 2. Make sure it's set to 15 feet, square. That green, I guess, is kind of difficult to see on the green, but this square then be everything that is lit up by Fairy Fire, the spell, and you would look in and see what that exactly does. But if any token was in here, it still has an aura. Apparently, you have to make that blank for it to go away. You can't have it as 0 because he'll still have one.
I think because we have the dynamic lighting part.
Well, that is his dynamic lighting,
yeah.
But he had it because I think I had 0 in there. But anyways, that's how you give auras to things. But let's talk dynamic lighting.
Bum, bum, bum.
So dynamic lighting is only available if you have a Plus or Pro subscription to Roll20. The Plus is $5 a month. The Pro is $10 a month. So you don't have access to this if you have a free account, but you can do most everything else with it. I just really like the feature, so I pay for it. I think it's really cool. But we'll kind of go and show you what this does. So when it comes to a character, So the first thing you're going to want to do, if you have access to dynamic lighting, you're going to want to go into your page settings. You're going to want to make sure dynamic lighting is turned on. If it's not turned on, it's not going to work. You can do all the dynamic lighting you want. Unless you turn it on in the sheet, it won't work. Enforced line of sight just means that when we start putting things in this map that control our sight lines, that's going to be enforced. We'll kind of talk about what that means. And then restrict movement, it's really a take it or leave it kind of thing. Restrict movement I like because if they can't see somewhere, they can't go there. And I'll kind of show you what that allows characters to do. I recommend doing it because if there's a house that you don't want players to see in and know that there's a really bad mind flayer in there, then you need to have this on. Otherwise, something that they can do, they could be able to take their token and without releasing click on it, players don't listen to me, they can move around the map with their lighting and they can see everything and then put it right back where they were, and they're not going to be able to move there. So they can't even move past into the black areas if you have this on, as long as there's something that would block them from getting there. If they just can't see that far, they're still going to be able to move and do that. But if there's like a door blocking them, they won't be able to get beyond the door until you take the dynamic lighting barrier off. We'll tell you how to do that. Global illumination, that's good if like you're outside. That will illuminate the whole map. So global illumination is good if you're trying to get the whole thing lit but still have dynamic lighting for certain things. Fog of War is different from dynamic lighting. Fog of War is where you can just create a big old blanket that the players can't see, and they can only go there if you allow them access. If you do not want to pay for dynamic lighting, I do recommend still using Fog of War, because you can get rid of portions of the map and only allow players to see the portions of the map that you do want them to see when you want them to see. The easiest way to use Fog of War, as you see, our whole map went black. That's because Fog of War is on. Come on over here to, let's see, the little eyeball and say reveal areas. You can, the only thing I don't like about this is that you can only do it in square portions. But if you wanted them to only be able to see the hallway in front of them, you could do that. You could open up the room, the next hallway, and vice versa. If you need this to all be highlighted, or you can do polygon reveal, which means you can open up things like that. You can open up triangles and stuff like that. If you want to reveal everything, just need to make big rectangles. And if you want to hide everything again, hide area, reset fog, it's all black again. So I really do recommend this if you're not going to pay for a subscription, because it's cheap, it's simple, it still mostly does what you want it to do. But we'll go into dynamic lighting just because it's cooler.
Now, one thing you can see, when he says like the map's going dark, it's only shading it slightly on our end, but if he was to click on the token layer and go to the token, the character token, and then click Control L, it'll show you what that character can see. So technically, so this is all this character can see right now. Can't see anything else. So with Fog of War on, this character sees only this.
I think I took the Fog of War off. This is just the dynamic lighting.
Oh, this is the dynamic lighting, that's right. But this is all they can see right now.
So if we wanted to give him dark vision, we'll kind of go over how to do that. So all dynamic lighting is going to be in the advanced options. Again, only if you have a subscription will you be able to see it. And so we'll go over this. Advanced Fog of War, I did want to talk about. Advanced Fog of War is just Fog of War, except once you've been to an area, it remains dimly lit. So you can remember where you've been. So if you're going through a dungeon, you have that on, and you go down a hallway and then you come back, it will be kind of lit, so you at least know that you've cleared that. I don't really use it because it was kind of getting complicated and it wasn't fully, it was really slowing down the browser. But you can try it and see if you like it. For dynamic lighting, it tells you your light radius here. The first one's going to be the light radius, and the second one's going to be the start of your dim. So if we want to give him 60 feet, we can give him 60 feet. And then if we wanted to start his dim, we can do that. Normally I just put this in here and leave it. And then the start of the angle is really cool, but I've told Dreav it just depends on if you want to use it. If you're playing a game and you're not focused on other people watching your game like we do, this is a cool tool, I think, to use. By having this at 360 default, they can see all around them. So we'll look at what that looks like. So now, our little dude, we look at what he can see. He can see a good portion of things because they're not hidden. Now up here, we have some dynamic lighting already lit, and he can't see past these walls. But most everything else he can see. So even if it was night, now dark vision, even in pure darkness, you still have to treat it as dim light, and you'd have disadvantage. For the most part though, if we said this was dimly lit, he would see it as full, and he could see everything. He could see this tree, he could see this table, he could see all the way to these portions. Now if we click off of him, as a GM, we could see this whole map. We know what's down here. So if, for instance,
change that from 360 to 180.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. Yeah, but just so we know, if we had a monster hiding down here, we know it's here. But if we look at his point of view, he can't see it. He kind of can see something over here, but until he moves beyond this wall and starts to head towards it, he's not going to know it's there. So dynamic lighting can be really kind of cool, and we'll show you, especially with like walls and stuff. So we'll show you the dynamic lighting here in a second, and then I'll hit 180. We have dynamically lit this house, which just means we've put the lines down on the dynamic lighting layer to keep some things hidden. So he cannot currently see in this house except for this door, which we don't have a thing over yet. But he can't see in here, so he can't see anything behind the house. Until he's granted access to the house, he can't see in it as well. But if someone says, "Come on in, George," George comes into the house, and he can now see everything in it. And the only reason he can see out is because those are supposed to be windows. So you can see the windows change with the angle at which he can see. Now, if we take him back outside, we have to go through. He can't go out the door now.
Now he can.
Well, he can go out the door, but if he can't see, he can't go out. See? It's restricting his movement. Go out the door. And so that 360 means he can see everything. However,
sorry, I need caffeine.
If we change him to 180, well, this is kind of messed up because because his token is not facing the right way. But if we said that if we had a different token, we would say that this person can only see in front of them. So it's probably more likely there if we give him 90-degree vision. But he can only see what's in front of him. Now I know the token's backwards. He can only see what's behind it.
Hold on. No. I think that... Nope, did I? Nope, that didn't. Oh, goodness. Kind of.
There we go. I fixed him.
Oh, it's to the front.
We just had to flip him vertically.
Oh, there we go.
So now he can only see what's in front of him. And so we don't really do this on our stream because it would make it very limited the things that you guys could see through Chad's perspective. However, if you were playing a game and you wanted to really make it difficult for your players based on just having to watch behind them, because if I'm at the back of the group, I can't see if anything's sneaking up on us unless I manually turn my guy and keep my head on a swivel, because my DM, if they were evil, could start bringing tokens towards us if he or she wanted to. So this is kind of fun. We don't really play with it a lot, but yeah, see, I only saw her doing that because I was facing towards the Hydra. But if I was looking towards this way and then I turn around again, it's gone. And unless I'm looking for it, oh, there it is. I'm dead. You have no idea that it's gonna be there. That was actually really cool because you moved it and I didn't. You were like going around in circles. That was awesome. That's awesome. So that's, I don't know. It's really cool to use, but for the most part, oh, you could also do the angle too. But remember, if you don't click has sight, the character's not going to be able to see anything. The player's not going to be able to see anything. You do have to click has sight. And if, for instance, you have a player that says, I'm carrying a torch so that my friends can see, you'll want to click all players see light. Now, the problem with this is if Boom, George, whatever, has dark vision, so he can see up to 60 feet, and then we click all players see light, he's now going to be emitting
the angle still says 90.
Ah. There we go. He's going to be emitting this 60-foot light for everybody. So because a torch doesn't give that much light. So something that you may just want to do is keep the 60 on him, and the player that normally can't see in the dark, just give them the 15-foot with the torch, just so they can see a little bit. Or the other thing that you could do is you can find a torch, and this is one that I think I have. Yeah, I bought this one. It came with a pack of other things. But you can always find free assets, so the free assets are always going to be blue. The paid assets are going to be yellow. If you really like these, they usually come in a pack of something that some artist has made. They're actually usually about $5 for the whole pack. You just have to decide if you really want to buy tokens or not, or maps for that matter. But you could come over here and find a torch that you like. Some will be PNG, some will not. You're just going to have to figure out by dragging it over. So something we could do is we could take this torch and give it its own light. And then, because the torch doesn't need to have sight, because no one's controlling that token, we would just say all players see light. So then if we move our dude over here, he obviously can already see, but anyone else that couldn't see, perhaps we take away his light for a second. He doesn't have dark vision now. Sorry, buddy. You're a halfling. He, though, can see this torch. So something that you could do is you could give this torch light, as a light source, and you could give the players permission, controlled by, and you could give them permission to
move it with them.
To move it with them is, yeah. And so now they can move their torch and their character, and then everybody is going to be able to see that torch that doesn't have light. And what Dreav is doing, she's moving both tokens at the same time. The only way she did that, she's moving them really fast now.
Sorry.
Is she selected both and is just dragging them. So you can do that with a lot of things. But dynamic lighting is really cool. So now we'll look at the dynamic lighting layer. So let's say, because we've already done the house, but let's say that this fence is really tall. The Hydra. This fence is really tall. We'll put our guy on the outside.
I think there's another little building at the bottom, too.
Yeah, we can do that. So the way to put these dynamic lighting barriers that we've been talking about is to actually go to the dynamic lighting layer. There's a map layer, objects and tokens, GM, and then dynamic lighting. If you haven't done anything with this, by going to the map layer, you cannot... You see I'm trying to click on Boom. I can't click on him. He's hidden, and he's going to stay there until I go to the token layer. But the map is moving. I'm going to try to put it back where it's supposed to go, because with the map is on the map layer. We've put it there. So whenever you add a token, it will automatically go to the layer with which you have selected. So if we want to put another torch, it's going to automatically be on the map layer. If we go to the token layer, we can't do anything with it. It is stuck there. So that's really helpful to layer your things. That way, because if you put it all in the same layer and you're trying to move this Hydra and you don't click it just right, you're going to have a mess. Trust me. I put a lot of things on maps sometimes just for aesthetic. Like, you know, all those gold coins in the dragon lair and stuff. I had to put those each individually on the one layer, and it can get really hectic. So you do want to use these layers as much as possible. So if we're in the token layer, we can mess with the tokens, obviously, but we're gonna then the GM layer. That is everything that for our eyes only. So if you or anyone else is a GM of the game, you can go ahead and use this layer. Now, you don't see anything special. We're going to take our Hydra, which is probably supposed to be a little bigger.
A little.
Put it on the GM layer. I went through that really quick. If you right-click a token, you'll have all these options. Add a turn will add it to the initiative tracker, which really quickly is right over here. So you can add it. You've seen this on stream before, at least on this page. You can have your initiative tracked by who goes when in battle over here. If you click add turn, it will add that person to the tracker, and then you have to add a number to them. You can delete it, copy, paste it, undo, bring it to the front. That doesn't move layers. It just brings it. If you wanted this person to be under like this torch, we'd move him to the back, and then the torch is on top of the person, if you can see that. And then there's advanced, so group. If we wanted to put multiple things so that when we click on it, we selected it all at one time. I used this when I made the aggregate, or the giant zombie hulking thing. I put different tokens on top of tokens on top of tokens, and then I selected all of them, I grouped them, and then when I clicked, I could move the whole aggregate at one time. It's really kind of cool. We already flipped it vertically, but that kind of flips it in relation to this grid. You can flip it horizontally if you want. Or set dimensions, you can set it however you would like. Which is pretty cool. But if you go to the layer, you can move things between layers by tokens specifically. So if we want this token to go to a specific layer, we would just, you could copy and paste him or just tell him where you want him to go. We're going to leave him here though. But I sent the Hydra to the GM layer. So if I go to the GM layer, you see nothing changes, but I have no longer access to this guy, but I can move the Hydra. And the players cannot see this. So if you want to put monsters or traps or pressure plates that have a DC of 20 that people cannot see unless they roll enough perception, I recommend putting all that stuff on your GM layer. If you have a map and you have a couple of traps, you could put them on there. For instance, the bear traps that the players needed to they would need to roll a high enough perception to see. You think you could see a bear trap, but if they're covered and they don't see them, you don't have to reveal them. I'm sure different DMs have different ways of thinking about that, but it all goes back to what you need a map for too. We didn't really talk about this. My personal philosophy is it's good to have a map for combat encounters. It's also good to have a splash page because the thing with playing online is people are very visual, they're very interactive. People want to interact. And so if you're doing a lot of role-playing online and there's nothing to do on this screen or this computer, obviously your players are going to be tempted to maybe do other things on their computer, or they might not be as engaged with the game. If you think that adding a map or a splash page so that they can, do things while they're interacting with each other and role-playing, that may be the route to go. I know for me, when I play as a player, I have to really kind of focus on what's being narrated by the DM or what other players are saying, or else I am prone to check out too. And I don't want to check out, but I want to make sure that I'm invested in the game. So it could be good to have a map for everything. It just means that you need to have a lot of prep time because you want to make sure that your maps are good and set up. Otherwise, you could just have a splash screen and play like people do at home, where they just have a piece of paper, and when it's time to have the map, they just draw it out, and then they play with their tokens. You really can do it either way. You can get super duper fancy, like I think that I do. I try to get fancy and spoil my players with their map experience sometimes. Well, I try. Or you've seen maps where we'll just kind of draw it out and it's not as fancy. It's all up to how much time you have and how good you want it to be. But me, I'm DMing in front of an audience. So I do want it to be a little visual appealing, so I would use something like this as opposed to just a blank screen.
To the maps I used to make for our...
There were nothing wrong with those maps, though. It just depends on what you have time to do. You may not have time all the time. So you just have to say, hey, at least we're playing Dungeons and Dragons today.
Yep.
But
sometimes my maps are busy. My maps are...
But when it comes to like this Hydra, so this Hydra is on the GM layer. No one can see it, and you can put stuff wherever you want to put it. And then when it's time to reveal, you would just go to token layer. Now you, as a GM, have to remember, if you want to move it, you have to go over to the token layer as well. But now, people will be able to see it, and you can move it and such.
Oh.
Did you have something to say?
No. I was messing around with something and I did something, but it didn't affect you. We're good.
Oh, okay. So if we go to our dynamic lighting layer, you see there's some lines that show up. Now these are only on the dynamic lighting layer, and they will not have any effect on the PCs except what they can and cannot see. And I think this is kind of simple, but I don't want to go too fast because some of it you just have to. It just takes some messing around with. But in order to make some blocking, so we want to make it so that this wall is high enough so that people cannot see past it, and then we'd have to get entrance inside to see the Hydra. So in order to do that, we're going to come over here, and I use polygon line. You can use draw shape and just make giant rectangles or circles or snap to the grid. But what I like to do is use polygon line. It just kind of depends on which color. No one's going to be able to see this except for you. But if you have a really dark map, it's kind of best to use like these very neon colors. So that's why I've instructed to use like pinks and yellows. So the way that this tool works is you click once and it will put down the start of the line. Click the next point and it will draw a straight line in between your 2 points. So that's done by left click. Like so. We want to go from this point to our next point, we would simply click. Now, we're going to put a gap here because this is a door. In order to stop this cycle of click, 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 we have to hit right click on our mouse. And you'll see that went from being super bright pink to still sort of bright pink. This line means that it's being edited. We hit right click, it locks it in. So we would just go a little farther, and we would just draw another line. Hi Hyper, welcome to the stream, man.
Hi, welcome.
So by doing this, we have thoroughly created a wall surrounding the complex. Now, why did I make these differently? You don't have to. All the lines are going to be the same. But if you wanted this to be different, you could just pick a different color. We started with NPC character creation, and now we're kind of on to dynamic lighting and mapping, and we'll get to any tips and tricks if we have time. If you have any questions about DMing on Roll20 or anything like that, Dreav and I are both DMs on this channel. So normally during this time slot we would be playing Dungeons and Dragons, either Dreav's game, which is based in Tal'Dorei, or my game, which is a homebrew world of Calriga. But we're on break right now, so we are taking time to do some DM talks. And that's what we're doing today. Hopefully next week we'll be back to playing some actual Dungeons and Dragons. But you can find us on YouTube below. We've got like 40 episodes plus some other. If you're looking for someone to play with, I would definitely check out Reddit. If you haven't tried looking for group, that's a great subreddit. I found some good people there. I found this current group just because I'm a streamer as well. So I found different people that wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons, and we all kind of came together to play.
You can also Roll20.
Yep.
They have a great little finding group options, and you can even break it down to what game you want to play, time you want to play, how often you want to play, what mechanics do you want to have play, like if you want to play with a webcam or voice only, text only. You can do all those options on Roll20.
So I'm just finishing up our walls here. So we can see that we've added all the walls, but we've left a couple of gaps. And so I like to do doors, you can see up here we've already done our doors a certain way. I like to do doors this way, and I'll tell you why. If you make doors this way, you can move them, and so you can let players see certain ways. So we'll make a new door, and then I'll show you what I like to do once I made one door. So I make doors yellow usually, and so the easiest way to do it is just click over the doorway and right click it. I like to make doors a little thicker, so I will, you can see there I just widened it, but now this door is a little crooked.
Because Boom didn't draw the line.
So I'm just going to copy and paste from the door we already have, because that's the easiest way to do it. But you can make it thicker, you can rotate it if you need to, you can do all that stuff. So we'll put our other doors in, and then I'm going to show you why I like to do it this way, and I'm going to have Dreav help me.
I'm ready to help.
So, if, for instance, we get a crack in a line, go to our friend's view over here. I'm going to give him...
Oh, so you want me to crack a line? I cracked it.
I'm going to give him a little bit of... So, yeah, you see here, if there's a gap between our two lines, over here, it's a solid line. We can't see past it, can't move past it. If we look here, there's a gap, so we can kind of peek through. Now, if you make that really small, it's going to look like a line and an inconsistency, and you're not going to want that. But you could intentionally put these, and the characters then, or the players could like look through and see. I can see, oh, it's gone now. I could see there was something on the other side here, the Hydra, but I don't know that. So without that peeking, so I could come all the way around here. See, there's some cracks down here as well. And I could say, you know, is this crack supposed to be here? And if it's supposed to, then the DM would say, yeah, the door's looking a little tattered, and you can see a little bit through. But if it's not supposed to be there, the DM would say, oh, no, let me fix that. But if the crack's supposed to be there, I can kind of control what I can see beyond. I think I see something up here. I'm just not sure what it is, but that all depends on my vision. But I could go around this whole place and say, "Oh man, I want to see in." Now, we didn't put a door over here, so I could say, "I can see in. Can I get in there?" DM could say, "Yeah, there's no door back there." So I could pop my character through, and now, because dynamic lighting is still on, I can only see what my character sees. So I would want to be very cautious with moving forward. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier, is seeing more than what my character actually sees. I can take my token, see, I can see all of this, but if I put my guy right back where he was, my DM doesn't know that I was doing that. My DM can only see if I'm moving my character or my token. So tell your players to be good people and not do that. Because that is what's known as metagaming, technically. Because their person can't see up here, so because I can't see, I can't say, can I move here? Because if I can't see over there and there's no lighting, you just would have to make a call. But if I come through here and I start to move here, and then I stop, say, what is this? My DM then could explain, oh, it's a Hydra and it eats your face off and you're dead.
Nom nom nom.
You'd have to be much more careful. Whereas if we had the dark vision of 60, we can see from outside this fence that there's a Hydra in there, and we don't want to mess with it. So it is kind of cool if I was the head of the party and the party was coming around this bottom half of the here, and I get to here and this door's open. I can say, nope, 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 back up, back up, back up, back up. and you know, then that would change the encounter. But this hider is not going to hurt us because it's super cute. So if we come down here, we can see that there's still cracks, and we'll go over to the other layer. And all Dreav has done is she's taken these yellow doors and put them a little bit wider than the actual doorway, so that there's no gaps between the purple and the yellow, which is really cool. So if you can see here, we'll zoom in. You can see this gap here. And we just want to make sure that there's no gap. And now we can't see in there. We have to wait for the DM to move the door. So if Dreav would move the door, we can now open the door and see in there. We can move our character in there and say, oh, what's in these boxes? Roll an investigation check. And you can do things that way.
And then your DM can trap him in there. Aww.
Oh, yeah, you could. You could trap me in there.
It's a trap. Mwahaha.
I have to go to character view. But I can't move myself out of the storeroom now. I'm stuck forever until she graciously decides to open the door and let me out. But yes, yeah. So, but that's only if you have restrict movement on. If you don't have restrict movement on, you can't do that fun stuff. So that's pretty much dynamic lighting. There is one thing I wanted to show you. So if we go back to the dynamic lighting layer, actually, now look at the objects and tokens. We'll move him in our house. So you can see that this fireplace is giving off light, but there's no token currently on this token layer showing that. We go to our dynamic lighting layer. You can see this torch token that I've taken, and I've added light to it. I've given it 10 and 5. All players can see this light. This is on the dynamic lighting layer. So make sure you're very, very good about knowing which layer you're on when you go to add tokens. Because if you go through your map and you do all your dynamic lighting like this, and then you're like, I'm ready to add monsters, and you add your monster tokens to the dynamic lighting, they won't show up on your token layer. Now, it's a super easy fix because you just go and you right-click them and you move them. Even from the dynamic lighting layer, you can still move tokens to any other layer. Cannot move anything to the dynamic lighting layer, though. You have to specifically put it on. But if we take this, we've added this light, we just put it here. See, no light is coming from here right now. That's just part of the map. But if we wanted to add some firelight, we just put this in the corner. And now no light is bleeding out of the fireplace because this dynamic lighting barrier is here. However, there's a little coming off of the fireplace. If we go back to our token layer, our guy can see the 15 feet that we've granted him. Also, he can see this fireplace over here because we gave some light on the dynamic lighting layer. So, if for some reason, and this will kind of go into our next topic, which is finding maps. If you find a map that has torches on it, but the torches need to emit light, and you don't want to put an extra torch token on, you could do this. You could put any token under there on the dynamic lighting layer, and then add torchlight to your map. And this can come in real handy when you're lighting dungeons, if really kind of anything. If you don't want the token to be on the token layer. For instance, we've had some maps here. I have some lava maps that I've purchased.
Lava.
And so this will kind of go into maps. If you find a map that you really like online, first of all, make sure it's not copyrighted or trademarked, especially if you're doing a game like this. I always encourage people to try to pay for their maps. I understand a lot of DMs are on a budget, but there's a lot of cool creators out there that make really cheap maps, and it's really good to support those people. So as you can see, I have done this. I've bought some maps.
You put it on the object and token layer.
I did, and not on purpose. Just that's the token. That's the layer we were on. I'm gonna move it over to the map layer. You know what? I'm gonna make a new map.
Before we get into making new maps, why don't we take our quick break right here and then we'll go into our maps segment.
That sounds great. We'll be back in less than 5 minutes. We will be right back. And we're back.
Hi guys.
So we're gonna spend the next 20 minutes or so kind of talking about maps. I know there have been some people on this channel that want to know they're having troubles with maps. So when you want to make a new map, the first thing you need to do is create a new page. It's going to give you a new one that you can access, and only you can access if you click on it. Only way your players are going to see it is if you take this player ribbon and move them to said map. So if I wanted any players, this is a test game, but if we wanted any players to see this BRB screen, we'd put them there. If we wanted them to see the old one, we'd put them there. And then they can only see it if they have a token on that map. So before you even jump into the map, it's just going to be a 25 by 25 unless you set it to be something else. So we look at this map that we're going to make is going to be a 10 by 10. So we'll set it as a 10 by 10. Now 1 unit is going to equal 5 feet. That's pretty standard. If you need it to be a really huge map, you could make it 10 or bigger. You could also make it 1 unit equals 1 foot, but that's going to be a really big map. I tend to just stick with 5 because it's easy. Background, if you're going to put a map on it, this background doesn't really matter, but if you're going to draw on your map, you want this to be whatever color you want your background grid to be. Because we have players that are kind of light sensitive and don't need all the white light coming off of their screen, we tend to make our backgrounds, you've seen them, be gray, dark green, dark colors. You can do whatever you want. If you want to be obnoxious and do yellow, you can, but we find it easier on our eyes to do dark grays and things like that. Now the only thing I will mention is that can make the grid hard to see, but as we come down here to our grid, diagonals, you can see there's different types of ways to do diagonals. I usually don't mess with that. You can play hex if you would like. We always just stick with square. And then this color, this is in the grid options, so this would be your grid color. So if you think it's going to be really hard to see a black grid, which is what I usually choose on this background, mess with that. And then you can mess with the opacity as well. So you can make it really, really easy to see, really, really hard to see. If you uncheck this box, it will take the grid off, and we'll kind of talk about what that means. And then you have your dynamic lighting options. So we'll put those there. And then GM opacity, that's for the GM layer. So if you wanted things to be a little lighter for you or a little easier to see, you can do that. And play on load would be if you had anything in your music player to play. When you open this page, automatically it's going to play that. And then this is also the settings where you would delete the page or archive the page. So we're going to hit OK. We can name the page.
Yeah.
I sometimes have issues with names sticking. I think it's just a bug that they sometimes have. You may have to put them in a couple times. But sometimes when I have when you get multiple pages, sometimes it can be kind of wonky, but it just depends. So I copy and pasted this map, so I'm going to put it on in. And now I put this on the token layer. Now something that's interesting to mention. I'm going to put this on the map layer. You can see that the grid appears only if something's on the map layer. If it's on the token layer, it will not be affected by the grid under it. Now this little tool up here I've been using a lot and not talking about it. This is just simply zoom in, zoom out. So if you have a really big map and you just need to see a little portion of it, you can zoom in, or you can zoom out and have it as tiny as you want. Now this means obviously if this is 10 by 10, you would have a giant map. But depending on what you're doing, your players have their own zoom in, zoom out wheel. So they can be on a specific portion while you can be seeing the grand scheme of things and the dragon that's coming to eat them. I don't know, we're just talking about killing characters today. I don't know why. Anyways, so we can, all right, get Boom out of here. Get out of here, Boom. All right.
Bye, Boom.
So we can see our 10 by 10. Now, something else I was going to mention was you can see, it doesn't want to do it now. There was extra grid that was showing up, and that sometimes messes me up because we know we only set this to 10 by 10.
Oh, yeah, it's when you zoom in, because
Yeah,
I can see it on mine.
Yeah, when you zoom in, it will sometimes do that. Just zoom out a little bit and it'll fix it. Yeah, like down here, you would think this would be visually unappealing, but no one else can really see that. It's just your zoom in, zoom out settings. So just fix it a little bit and just get it to where you like it. If it doesn't bug you, then it doesn't bug you. But you can see that it's really not too hard to see the grid on this gray, but it's all up to personal preference. So you could make your lines yellow if you wanted. You can make your background something, but remember you can also change the opacity of your grid. So the grid is there, but we can't see it. But if you turn opacity all the way to the right, then you're not going to have any issues seeing your grid. So this map is now set. There's no more map than this. This is it. So this is all the players are going to be able to see when they get here, when you allow them here and you put their tokens here. But right now, the only thing a player is going to be able to see, because we have enabled dynamic lighting, is black. It's going to be a giant black screen. And so if you had a larger map, something you do need to make your players aware of is usually, depending on their settings for zoom in, zoom out, they're only going to be able to see the top portion of your map. So if they're zoomed in about this much and you have so much map for them to see, they're going to say, I just see black. Sometimes you may want to encourage your players to zoom out a little bit until they find their token, because you can put them anywhere in the map that you want them to be, but they may default to the top left. So just make them aware that there's more map and that they are on the right side of the screen, and then they can say, oh, I found us, and then they can move their screen with their character. But I was going to show you real quick how we can dynamically light this so that the lava shows up while looking visually appealing. Torch. Torch is what I was thinking, but there's also flame. So you can see there we had a little bit of a bug out. That flame did not take well. And it is currently bugged. So the only way that we're probably going to fix that
is by refreshing.
Is either clicking on and clicking off again, or we can see that it has bugged through every map. So we do need to just refresh our page.
Stand by while we live.
And it took me to the Guardians of Parna page. So give me a second on that.
As he gets into the correct game.
Just don't know what was going to be shown on my browser, so I just wanted to be careful on that.
It's all good.
Alright, we're back, and we only have the one flame. So this flame is now on our token layer. And once you don't feel like you have to pull 30 flames. Just pull one flame and use copy and paste, or Control C and Control V. It's going to make it a lot easier and make sure that bug out doesn't happen. But so if we put this here, currently on the token page, the player is going to say, why is there a torch in the middle of the lava? And if it's supposed to be there, then you can keep it there. But we need to put it on our dynamic lighting page. So we get a small peek at what Dreav is already doing with these walls. And she is just making sure, now on this map, it wouldn't necessarily matter because there is black outside of these walls, but the characters would be able to move their tokens there if we don't put these barriers up. If we put the barriers, they're only going to be able to stay within the confines of this cave or dungeon or whatever it is, and they aren't going to be able to move their character tokens over here. But if you put this, the way that these maps were designed were to be placed, I think, next to a couple of others. At least that's how I've used them, as I've matched them up. So in that case, you're going to want to do this dynamic lighting so they can't see the other parts of the map. They can only see the parts that you want them in. And dynamic lighting, I think, really works well for dungeons and caves. You can use it for the houses and things that we saw. It really just depends on your map and if you need to block sightlines. If you don't need to block sightlines, then, you know, just use something else. It just depends. Like Fog of War. If you just need to hide portions of the map, use Fog of War. Whereas if you want to really hide lots of things, dynamic lighting would be the way to go. So she's done that. We're going to give our lighting to our torch here. Make sure all players can see it. Now we can see that our torch is giving off just a little bit of light, just like we want it to. So if we put it here, and also a good note, while you're in grid view, you can only snap things to the grid. It's automatic, going to snap to the grid. However, if you hold your left Alt key and you move things, you can see I'm putting it now in different portions of the grid. It's not snapping. As long as I keep left Alt held, it will do that. Also, a way to get around the grid, if you turn the grid off, it will completely go away, like we talked about, and you will have that ability with all your tokens as well. There will be no grid to snap to, so this will be the automatic default. You can put them in any arrangement that you would like.
So how do we make this lava be just the lava?
So the easiest way to make the lava light is adding some token. It doesn't have to be a torch token because no one's going to see it. It can be any token you want. If we wanted it to be, you know, that white or that Hydra token, we could make it that. It doesn't matter. The biggest thing is that we add the light options like we talked about. Oops. I hit the wrong button. I
see
think
what happened.
What had happened? Well, I don't think there was anything bad on that screen. Hopefully not. So we can use any token we want. What I find easiest to do is make the token bigger. But the token's light is still only going to be determined by the whatever you give it. You can make it as big as you want, but you want to make sure you're giving it the appropriate amount of light. So now we can see that this one token is lighting, because we gave it has sight, is lighting up all of this. Let's go ahead and drag over another token here.
All right. We drag boom back. Oh wait, no, we never set up a token. There we go, that worked.
So we'll give this person sight, but no, they will not emit their own light.
We also do need to put them on the token layer.
We do.
this is where I said it becomes very important to make sure we're putting characters on certain layers where they need to be.
So, well, that's probably my issue with the light token too. But we can see now with this person that light is being emitted from here, and there's dim light being emitted as well. So, if we wanted this to be a very bright cavern, we have added 55 light, or 50 light, and the dim light starts at 45. So, with this person only having sight and no light source of their own, they can see that pretty much this whole cavern now is lit up, and the only thing that we have on there we can see is this torch. So if we move this torch to the center, it's pretty much lighting up the whole place. Like, we drag our knight around and our knight can see everything in this cavern. I've done this the hard way before. That's the really easy way to do it. If you don't want this to be as bright of lava, you would simply go back to the dynamic lighting layer, and you would just take a look at, now only that is being lit. So if we put a couple of those in really quickly, now we can see that there are pockets of light. So if this lava is obviously hotter than maybe the lava we know is over here, this knight can only see what we want it to see. So it can't see the whole cavern now. It can only see where the lava is. So there could be something hiding over in this portion, and they would have no idea until they take the leap of faith to jump on what they know is this rock, and then they could ask you to jump over here. But because they have no light source of their own, they're completely dependent on the light sources that are on the map. It's only when you give them light source of their own that can they move it and have control over it. But making maps can get as complicated or as difficult as you want it to be. You can, like I said, you can find maps and just upload them. Uploading a map is pretty simple. You can drag it from your desktop straight over to Roll20, or you can go to My Library and click Upload. You can add folders. You have the ability to look for maps. So if you wanted a lava map, type in lava. It's going to show you from the web everything that it finds with the lava search, or it's going to show you these lava caves that someone has made and wants to sell to you. And as you click on that, it will take you over to that page so you can look through all these different map assets that people have made for your entertainment and enjoyment. Personally, I think it's good to, if you're going to buy maps, write your encounters to fit your maps. Don't describe a room and then say, oh, here's the map that goes with it. But if the map looks like nothing you described, the player's going to have a really difficult time figuring out what is going on. But if before they even see this map, I tell them there's a 10-foot cavern over here that leads to what they can appear to be some lava, and there's you know, you have to go off what the players can see. So this knight can't really see, it can only see the lava. So as long as you describe the room and then give them access to it, I think that goes pretty well. Another way that you can use these maps that we started out using and then quickly switched is you can make the maps up and not give your players access to see them. Again, it's all up to you, but if you just want to have a game where you're describing, because that's what Dungeons and Dragons is theater of the mind. Theater of the mind.
Yeah.
You can make the maps up, move the characters yourself, and just describe to them everything that's going on. We were doing that in the Dark Tunnels in episodes 1 for about 30 minutes, and then Gabby said, I need a visual, so I threw them on the map, and they were able, or maybe episode 2, I don't remember, but I was describing things to them and moving them, but they were having a really hard time visualizing it, so we used the visual tools and aids that were here. You just have to make sure that that's what you want to do. It's completely up to you as a DM, deciding what you want to do with that. Just make sure that you're prepared, though. You know, if you're gonna have a battle on this map, make sure you have the tokens prepared. Something that you can do if you're going to do that, because you can take advantage of the fact that the players cannot see past this purple token. So if we want to put our lava troll in here, we put him up here, go back to our knight. Has no idea, even if they're over here, has no idea there's a lava troll over here. And until we make that happen, was I? Well, you want to make sure the troll, first of all, is on the right layer. But even still, okay, so if we go to this player's view, they can't see the troll. We can see it because we're the DM, but they can't see it.
They can't see it because of the line of sight's there. Right.
This barrier is here, and until we describe that a lava troll breaks through this wall, and you start your combat initiative, they would have no idea. So you can take advantage of that, and obviously you're going to prepare your encounters. So you're going to want to think ahead and put things on the map. You could also use that GM layer like we talked about and put things, so you know, if you have a 2-part encounter and they kill the lava troll, but then its brother comes up from the north tunnel, you can already have him ready. You don't have to reuse his token or anything like that. I think that's a really good intro to dynamic lighting, to map making. If you're watching this later and you're having trouble with map stuff, like, hit me up. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Discord, and all that stuff is below. We'd love to help you guys out with things. Even if Dreav feels like she can't handle your questions, she can. She's knowledgeable in some things, and I'm knowledgeable in some things, and together
we know some things.
We know some things. But we have not all the knowledge, but some. And we're still learning too, especially as Roll20 upgrades features and adds new things. We continue to grow with them as they grow. But I think that's really what we wanted to cover today. We covered kind of our thought process on NPC creation and tips and tricks for how to use Roll20 most effectively in having NPCs. We talked about the maps, the dynamic lighting, and kind of walked you guys through that. And again, that's only if you have a subscription. If you don't, you won't have access to that. But you can still heavily use the Fog of War that comes with every subscription, or a free account is what I meant to say, a free account. And then we did cover some tips and tricks. If we have time for another episode, maybe later in the year, we might compile some things that we're like, oh, that would be really good to highlight, or that's something that I wish I had shared. And we can kind of talk about those kinds of things for DMs that want to hear what we have to say, which is kind of crazy. But did you have anything that you wanted to add, or something that you were thinking about, Dreav?
No, I think we got it pretty good. Can't really think, except I think I'm going to cause this MP to explode in fire. Ah. Ah.
And that's pretty cool. The only way we are able to do that is we can plug the Pro subscription that is $10 a month. The only reason I have access to it is because Dreav is a GM on this game, and so if you share games and GM status with other people who have access to these features, you will have access to these features as long as. So that's kind of a way to get around the subscription, but I don't want you to do that. It's not really the best way to use those.
See, although I have the cool effects, because I do have a pro account in our Guardians of Parna game, Boom does not have access to this because I am not a GM in that game. I am a player. So while in this little server here, we're both GMs, so he has access to all my tools because I'm a GM as well. In our Parna game, he will not have access to this because I'm a player in the game. I'm not a GM, so you just gotta keep that in mind as well.
And you have to be careful when giving GM access to other people if you're trying to get around the subscription, because if they're a player in that game, but they have the effects that you want, they will be able to see everything in the game. So if your buddy has subscription, you make him a GM so that you can use that for your game, he's going to be able to see this troll hiding, and then you're going to have to depend on his trust and his metagaming-ness if he's going to act accordingly. So just something to keep in mind. Obviously, this grid is so big because we're so zoomed in. It's only a 10 by 10. The maps that we usually play on are sometimes 30, 40, 50 by 50. They get kind of big, and that's on me, but I like to use big maps. It is who I am. But something that you could do, something you could do is if we added more grid to this, we could make this cavern bigger because of, so if we made more grids, we expanded this map and made it bigger, obviously the grid would get smaller, and so that would make this from being about a 10-foot wide hallway, it could be a 20-foot wide hallway. So you could always make this map bigger. It's all going to depend on the resolution of the picture or the map that you have. But if for some reason, you still wanted to make your own maps and you're really into hand drawing, you could hand draw your maps, take a good picture or scan of them, upload them to your computer, and you could actually play on those as well. The only thing, if you want to restrict access, you would have to do is you could either dynamically light them, or you could use the polygon tool on the token layer, and you could do that to your map to kind of enhance it as well. But there's tons of cool features that we haven't even really touched on Roll20. But for the most part, we've kind of done a very good gloss over of some of the things. I really do encourage you to look up the Character Mancer for making new characters. They made it super easy, super simple. But if you want to go through your book and go through the process that we laid out last week in our video, you can go ahead and do that. And we're actually going to play that video last week's stream right after this one. So if you want to keep watching, you certainly can. We'll go through that process with you guys over the next 2 hours. But for our live stream, I think we're done. We want to thank you guys for watching and hanging out. You can catch us here almost every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. We play live the Guardians of Parna game, which is ready for its 41st episode. And then we are starting a new Tal'Dorei game, hopefully next week, with Dreav as our DM. And that will be the first real episode. We were playing off, but we're just going to kind of skip, I think, and jump, so you guys can get caught up on story. So that'll be good. We encourage you guys to check us out on our YouTube. Check out the other channels that make content as well. And for now, TTFN? Ta-ta for now. I don't know where I was going with that. But we'll see you guys later. We're going to start that rerun right away. And thanks for watching, and we'll catch you soon.
See ya!